what's his name. It's always shows.
Yeah. So it's your turn then.
It's my turn.
Good evening. I'm calling to order the first meeting of the City of Salem Budget Committee and the Salem Urban Renewal Budget Committee for Wednesday, April 9th, 2014. Would the city recorder do a roll call, please?
Mayor Peterson,
Here.
Member Bennett,
Here.
Member Tessler, absent Member Nanke,
Here.
Member Clausen, absent Member Dickey,
Here.
Member Thomas, oh, absent, not, yeah, not, Member Menards,
Here.
Member Clem, absent Member Berger, absent Member Kylaway,
Here.
Member Bailey, absent Member Moore Green,
Here.
Member Wildfang,
Here.
Member Gonzalez,
Here.
Member Benjamin,
Here.
Member Clark,
Here.
Member Pruitt.
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a motion for the approval of minutes from February 9th, 2014?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Member Bednars and seconded by Member Nanke. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes for April 9th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so moved. All right. I want to welcome all of you here tonight on the first Budget Committee meeting, and I'd like to just take 1 minute to give a brief overview of what's happening here tonight and the next couple of weeks. This is for the benefit of those who may be new to the process or those watching on CCTV while they're eating dinner. Bon appetit. A budget is a financial plan containing estimates of revenues and expenditures for one fiscal year. We will be discussing our next fiscal year, which starts July 1st and ends June 30th. Tonight, the city manager will present her proposed budget, and we, the Budget Committee, will carefully review the proposed budget over the next few weeks and consider comments from the public. We encourage citizen involvement and comments from the public throughout the year, but especially during the next couple of weeks. There are agendas and sign-up sheets by both doors tonight, and at each meeting, you can add your name to the list. Please note that each person's testimony is limited to no more than 3 minutes, so we can all go to bed by midnight. On May 7th, at the end of our process here, we will make a recommendation on the budget to the Salem City Council and the Urban Renewal Agency Board. City Council will then hold a hearing on our recommendations, make modifications they deem necessary, and pass the budget for the year. And now I'd like to ask City Manager Linda Norris for her presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the Budget Committee, and I also want to welcome you here tonight. This has been the culmination of months of a lot of hard work on a number of people's part in the organization. And I want to start just by thanking our wonderful budget staff, Kelly Jacobs, Kelly Lindenbach, and Ryan Zink for all the work they did. Casey Duncan, our deputy city manager, all of our department heads, division managers, and then the financial analysts, the budget analysts, and all of our departments have really done an amazing job with this budget, as always, and including the copy center. I appreciate everyone who's been involved with this. It's a big team effort to make sure that this budget is here. And let me, okay, thank you. So we've been on a long road since the recession started in 2008 to carefully steer through that recession and keep most of our city services intact. We've kept the city financially stable, we've built up our beginning working capital, and we've cut costs throughout that time. A few examples of downsizing include reducing library hours, eliminating most recreation programs, closing 2 of our least busy fire stations, eliminating the general fund transfers to transportation, as well as many others. Those have all been very difficult decisions that we've struggled through, but they've helped us maintain our financial stability and keep our bond rating. There have been upsides too, though. During this time, we've had an opportunity to assist the local economy. In 2008, the community passed a Streets and Bridges bond measure, and those projects, some in every ward in the city, not only improved our transportation system and made our bridges safer, but they provided critically needed jobs, local jobs, during the recession. Through December of 2013, over 92% of the funds for those projects were awarded to successful bidders in the area economy. We anticipate saving over $16 million on our initial project list, and Mr. Fernandez, our Public Works Department Director, will talk about the additional needed projects we can complete due to the careful management of those funds and the careful monitoring of those projects. In terms of job creation, in the last 2 years, we focused more intently on retaining local businesses and helping them expand. We're seeing wonderful results from their confidence in Salem. A few examples are the expansion of Garmin, Kettle Foods, Norpac, Salem Hospital, and many others. We've also used a slow time of the recession to make sure that we had our infrastructure in place so that when the economy began to improve, we were ready to go. This summer, we'll have a new 2.2 million gallon reservoir online for the Mill Creek Corporate Center, which will help development and water pressure in that entire area. And we've put in other infrastructure and done wetlands mitigation so that much of that corporate area is immediately ready for development now that manufacturing companies are starting to look for opportunities to expand and to move. So where do we find ourselves with this budget? In preparing the budget, we followed the financial guidelines that we set at the beginning of the recession, and these have really served us well over this time. We want to support community safety, livability, and economic development. We want to comply with city policies and, of course, with Oregon budget law. It's important that we maintain our bond credit rating, so when we go out for a street and bridges bond or some other bond, that we get very low interest rates. We want to fund all of our commitments and meet all of our regulatory requirements, and there are many of those. We want to balance our operating costs, have available revenue, and keep the capacity to respond to things in the community as we need to. The proposed budget provides another year of service stability with the exception of street maintenance, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. This budget is based on first and primary council goals, trends, rates, in-depth economic analysis, and our 5-year forecast we do for most of our funds. Citywide, we anticipate total resources being about $519.1 million next year, with expenditures being about $464 million. In comparing proposed budgets over the last 3 years, new revenues are increasing largely due to funds for the streets and bridges projects, with modest growth in current revenue, and that's one of our concerns as we move forward. The largest anticipated new revenue growth is in the area of extra capacity facilities, which are funded by system development charges in water and sewer. Building and safety revenue is also beginning to increase, and all of those together show that the economy is starting to improve, which is a wonderful thing, and it's something we've been waiting for since 2008. Our recovery is not on the scale of Portland's or Ben's, but it's a slow, steady recovery, and it'll probably take a few more years before we're in full recovery. When you look at the next chart, you can see what our expenditures are overall for personal services, materials and services, capital outlay, and non-operating expenditures. That just gives you a quick overview of the citywide budget, and those are in millions of dollars. The increase in non-operating expenditures is from a transfer of $8.3 million from our radio fund to the capital improvement program for the planned replacement of our radio communication system, which will give us interoperability with Public Works, Police, and Fire. This slide highlights budget expenditure types. Once the projects from the Streets and Bridges bond measure end in 2017, and you can see that 16% of the budget there, so that's been a big part of our budget for several years. We'll start to ramp up with some water and sewer project needs that we have, but the level of water and sewer projects won't be the size of the Streets and Bridges bond measure, so there'll be a little contraction in our budget once we get to that point. I want to talk a little bit about staffing. The proposed budget eliminates 6.65 positions. Some of those were done mid-year in the current fiscal year. Since 2008, we've eliminated 116 positions citywide. This next year at 1,140 will be at our lowest staffing since fiscal year 2001. And during that time, of course, the population and the land size of Salem has grown tremendously. And we've been able to keep up with that by working smarter, by being creative about how we do things, by merging programs, by working with our partners and other governmental agencies. And we're very pleased to have made that kind of progress and to be able to move forward. The reduction in staffing, though, means that we can't provide all the services that we would hope to or need to provide as we go forward. It does have an impact. Under the city charter, the city manager has a responsibility for the organizational structure of city operations. And due to department head retirements and some other staff changes, I'd like you to know that in this year's budget, the library has returned once again to the city manager's budget, as well as facilities. And I think that's probably where they'll reside from this point on. Expenditures have grown due to project costs, the increased costs of personnel services for collective bargaining contracts, wages, insurance, materials, and services. PERS rates have been a budget concern throughout the recession because as market shares lost value, we've had to make up that difference with rates that we pay. It's important to note that the rate relief through the 2013 PERS reform legislation is being challenged in court. We may not have an outcome to that lawsuit until spring of 2015. This year, like last, PERS savings will move into the ending fund balance. Having the lower PERS rates for 2 years has enabled us to maintain the current service system. We would have otherwise had to cut services in the current year, as well as propose more cuts next year if we didn't have that increased source of revenue. So we have several funds on the watch list, the general fund, and these are ones that we just monitor extremely closely. We monitor all of them closely, but these are ones that we're more concerned about. Our Public Works Transportation Fund, our Airport Fund, the Parking Fund, and the Emergency Services Fund, and I'll talk about each of those for a minute. The general fund, one of the concerns that we have is that revenues are not keeping pace with expenditures, and you can see very clearly here when we compare what we're anticipating this year to next year's budget, revenues are estimated to increase only by 1.8%, while expenditures are increasing 2.9%. So it doesn't take much to see that that's not going to be sustainable over the long time. In the Transportation Fund, without additional significant cuts to core general services, we can no longer transfer at one point over $1 million of general fund revenue to streets maintenance. State highway tax and other revenue sources that provide funds for those maintenance activities are not keeping up with the need. In this budget, we're eliminating 4 positions. Beginning this summer, we will have fewer resources for our street maintenance. We're going to need an additional revenue source if we're going to adequately maintain our streets and prevent even more costly repairs and rehabilitation over time. And we will, over the next year and going forward without additional revenue source, be focusing on just mandated safety requirements, signals, signs, those sorts of things. The Airport Fund, our airport is a very strong economic driver in this community. We have, however, years of deferred maintenance costs that we haven't been able to support, and we are currently working on addressing them with some financial assistance from the Federal Aviation Authority. This summer, we expect to replace the lighting system on the airfield. The general fund budget's also allocating $240,000 to match a $2.73 million FAA grant to rehabilitate taxiway C. Revenue for the airport fund is largely dependent on leases, and that's what it takes to operate that fund, is to make sure that we have good leases, and we work very hard on marketing the airport property. The parking fund, there's been a lot of talk about the parking fund in this community over the last year. The parking fund is not able to pay for operating costs for parking, as well as handle the repair and replacement needs in our parking structures. Those costs have been budgeted for the Riverfront Urban Renewal Area, over $5 million since 2006. This situation means that we're only able to address current asset failures, not maintenance needs or preventative needs with available funds. In addition, we have the lost opportunity cost of how those Riverfront Urban Renewal Area funds might be used to promote economic development in the downtown area. The proposed budget allocates a little money for new banners and holiday decorations for the downtown, but unless the Economic Improvement District is renewed, there will be no funds available for the downtown clean team, flower baskets, cleanliness, and marketing beginning in July. The Emergency Services Fund is probably council, I'm not sure the Budget Committee knows that we maintain a 6 months operating balance in this fund in case we ever have to, on a short notice, pick up the ambulance service. We found that we weren't able to sustain that at the same level of operating expenses, so mid-year we cut some positions from that fund. We stopped doing third-party billing, and the fund is now stable, and we have this 6-month reserve going forward. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that are in the budget. Although we have concerns about the funds that I've just talked about, we have a lot of wonderful projects going forward that are paid for out of funds that are not the general fund. In design this year, and there are many that I know several councilors have been waiting for a long time for, and people in the community have been waiting for, the 25th and Madrona Avenue intersection will be in design, Kubler Boulevard at Commercial Street, Skyline Road corridor, and then we'll be adding, we have money here to add 4 additional railroad safety crossings going forward. In construction, you'll see construction at Market Squeakle, Northeast Corridor, Glen Creek Road at Wallace Road intersection, which is ongoing. We'll have some Salem neighborhood sidewalk rehabilitation and repair, and the community always appreciates making sure that our sidewalks are in better shape, and we'll be doing some repair to the Winter Street Bridge. Utility improvements. We have a number of stormwater improvements, flood mitigation. We're working on our Mill Creek early warning system. We'll have some stormwater retrofits for Center Street and Marion Street bridges so we can pipe those to the appropriate place rather than the stormwater going into the river. $12.8 million of wastewater projects and $14.3 of water projects, the system infrastructure in the Mill Creek Reservoir. And Mr. Fernandez will talk more about those as he does his budget. I'm going to talk a minute about parks. We have the Minto Brown Island Bridge and Trail is in the budget at $8.15 million. We have an additional $400,000 in the budget for widening existing trails and doing some restorative work to Minto Brown Island Park, including doing some work on the former cherry orchard. We have money in the budget for, after due diligence and with our purchase and sale agreement, the potential of expanding Riverfront Park with that park parcel. We have a master plan going on for the Battle Creek Park, which we bought a few years ago. And then there are about $262,000 almost in Salem Park Improvement Fund projects that are ongoing next year. So we'll see some additional improvements to our parks as we go forward. The Minto Brown Bridge and Trail project, we're in the last stage with our permits. So once we receive our final permits, then that will go out for an RFP and for bidding. We also do things to make sure that we're running more efficiently within the organization. The radio system replacement is one example of that project. Electronic plan review, we have $350,000 budgeted so that we can review those plans and people can submit their plans online. That'll save paper and time and cost for everyone. We're also beginning to work more on our internet network connectivity to city facilities, and we have $381,000 there, so we're connecting things directly with our own lines to our city resources. And the Information Technology Department is investing $115,000 in storage infrastructure. The IT department has also been involved over the last year in strategic IT plans with almost every department. They've worked through most of them now, which gives us a very good long-term roadmap of what our technology plans and needs are going to be for the future of the community and for the future of the city organization. I'm very excited about the work that's going on there. So in closing, there are some positive signs in regard to the city budget. Primarily, the economy is improving. We're no longer trying to see how bad it's going to get. So, and I appreciate being in this position now after all of these years. We continue to expect a slow, measured economy. The biggest negative sign is that general fund revenue still is not adequate to support core general fund services. We're currently in a time, we build up our beginning fund balance, as I've said earlier, so we're currently in a time where we're weighing whether the economy and revenue, especially in the general fund, is going to recover fast enough that we don't have to eat into our general fund working capital too much. And so that'll be something we're going to be watching very closely over this next year and as we go forward. If we find that revenue doesn't come in as we're anticipating, or if we find that we have unanticipated costs, if the PERS lawsuit is found against public employers, or if what we anticipate happening in our 5-year forecast actually does come to pass, we'll have to cut about another $6 million in our general fund over the next 5 years. Now, on the other side, if revenue comes in a little faster or we have some positive changes, it won't be that bad. So this year, I felt very comfortable in proposing a stable service system. We're starting with about $19 million in our beginning fund balance. I think that's going to be adequate. Depending on how revenue comes in the year, we may have to reduce that to some extent. In the budget message, I talk about as much as taking it down to about $16 million, which is still quite a bit higher than we have had in previous years. So we'll monitor that carefully. If we see that we're trending in a negative direction, I've already had plans this summer to meet with the department heads to talk about creatively looking at what the next contraction of general fund services might be and how we might accomplish that, or what the revenue ideas might be. And we'll be presenting those to City Council as needed, depending on how things are moving. I wanted to talk just a minute about compression before I end. As I've talked to every year, we have property tax compression. Those are ballot measures that were passed in the late 90s. 80s and 90s maybe at this point. And the red indicates the number of properties on the Marion County side of Salem that are in compression. That means that property tax doesn't go up through 3% on those properties. That's, we're losing over $1 million a year, continue every year to lose over $1 million a year to property tax compression. And as long as that situation is the case, we're going to be in this predicament where we have growth, we have more people, we have more land, we need more services, and we don't have enough revenue to support that. So that's our challenge. But what I do want to say is we've done some very hard things since 2008. We'll continue to make the right decisions, I know, as a group as we go forward. And we'll continue to provide important municipal services for the community. So that's my very brief budget presentation, and we have more people here to speak this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Norris. Before I forget, would the City Recorder please note that members Clausen and Berger joined us? Thank you. And Ms. Jacobs, I'm sorry, I forgot the handout material on the agenda. Is there anything?
Just a little bit, but I can wait for questions.
Okay, then we'll wait. All right. Next on the agenda is the Public Works budget. Director Peter Fernandez, the microphone is all yours.
Thank you. Chair Holloway, Mayor Peterson, councilors, and Budget Committee members, good evening. I am Peter Fernandez, Public Works Director. Tonight it is my pleasure to present to you the department's budget. My presentation will cover all of the department's operations and funds as well as the capital construction budget. And that's, for reference, that's all of our budget is in Book 2 except for about $2 million from the recreation budget that's in Book 1. So just about everything is in our own tome here. Public Works Department staff manages a substantial enterprise. The budget before you has been carefully prepared to meet the needs of the community and balanced to available resources. The majority of our services and programs are funded by sources other than property taxes. As I present our proposed budget to you, please keep in mind that we continually look for creative ways to gain efficiencies and control service delivery costs. The department is organized into 4 operating divisions: planning and development, engineering, operations, and parks and transportation services. The divisions are led by our management team members: Robert Chandler, our assistant director; Jim Bonnet, our city engineer; Francis Kessler, operations services manager; and Mark Bechtel, our parks and transportation services manager. Department staff provide 9 key services to the community. They include production, storage, and distribution of drinking water, collection, conveyance, and treatment of wastewater, and management and stewardship of the stormwater system. Collectively, these 3 services represent the city's utility. Not shown on the slide, but critical to the utility's operation are meter reading, utility billing, and dispatch. Department staff also operate and maintain the streets and parks infrastructure and provide recreation services. And we also provide infrastructure master planning, administrative support and financial oversight, and management and delivery of the city's capital construction projects. The department's budget is housed in 3 operating funds: the Water and Sewer Fund, the Public Works Fund, and the General Fund. 3 additional funds house the capital construction projects, our budgets, and you see those: 255, 260, and 275. Revenues for the operating funds come from a variety of sources. Utility rates are the primary source of revenue for the Water and Sewer Fund. The Public Works Fund relies on state gas taxes for street maintenance and operations, and the General Fund for parks operations and planning. And then General Fund revenues and user fees fund our recreation services. Revenues for capital construction funds come from utility rates, general obligation bond proceeds, systems development charges, and grants. The funds that house each of the division's operating budgets are highlighted here. As you can see from the slide, the majority of our operations are housed in the Water and Sewer Fund, Fund 310, and then at the bottom there you see that Parks and Transportation budget is housed in Fund 155, the Public Works Fund. However, the recreation services, which are part of Parks and Transportation, their budgets for Recreation Center 50 Plus are housed in the General Fund. The department's proposed budget is $228 million, and it includes operations, construction, debt service, and trust funds. And the summaries, you can see that at the top of the table there. The middle of the table summarizes each division's proposed budget and staffing levels. The administration division on the leftmost column includes the planning and development and business and finance work units. The non-divisional budget in administration includes items such as debt service, capital transfers, contingencies, and other miscellaneous expenses that are all for the Water and Sewer Fund. Organizationally, wastewater treatment is under operations, but we have always budgeted that separately, and that's why we show those in the next 2 columns. And then in the last 2 columns, you see the summaries for engineering and parks and transportation. This table summarizes the department's proposed budget by fund and category. We do not propose any service level changes for water and sewer or the general fund. As the city manager indicated, we do propose substantial service reductions in the transportation services portion of the Public Works Fund. These reductions are in response to revenues not keeping up with operating costs, an issue that I'll discuss in greater detail a little later in my presentation. Our past and proposed staffing levels are summarized here. The reduction of 4 positions in Parks and Transportation are the result of the planned service reductions. The 1 1/2 position reductions in operations are primarily due to retirements and minor reorganizations that we've done as we address those issues. Public Works construction budgets represent over 85% of the city's proposed capital budget. The budget totals include both new and existing project funds, and it's an important concept that all of this is not new money. A lot of it is carryover money, as many of our projects are complicated and take several years to complete. The Public Works portion of the construction budget totals $111 million, and it's spread over those three categories: transportation, utilities, and parks. And even though there are a variety of projects, the engineering staff does manage all of the capital construction for all city capital projects. So the city manager always steals my thunder when she does her presentation first when it comes to the project. So she did a great job of capturing that information. I'll just do a little more summarizing here. The transportation construction budget does continue work on the 2008 streets and bridges bond projects. In the coming year, you'll see completion of the Market-Sweigel corridor improvements. About half of that is complete. The other half would be completed. The eastern half will be completed this year. Construction has started on the Wallace Road and Glen Creek intersection widening, and we are doing a large number of pedestrian and vehicular projects throughout the community. Design's underway on the Kubler Boulevard, will soon be underway on the Kubler Boulevard widening from Commercial Street to I-5, Skyline Road, and the Madrona 25th project. All told, when we're done with the 2008 bond projects, we'll have done over 60 projects throughout the community, and the original list was something like 40 projects. So thanks in equal doses to a great economy for owners, where we got great bids and great management by the engineering staff. We were able to save some substantial amount of money and add a significant number of projects for the community. Significant utility projects include improvements at the Willow Lake facility, completion of the Mill Creek Reservoir. We're also doing rehabilitation at Upper Bennett Dam, and that's one of the two dams that we own on the North Santiam River that help us flow water into the Guerin Island water treatment plant. Construction of the Wallen Creek flow improvements at Woodside Drive. That's a project near and dear to Councilor Clausen's heart. And in general, over $4 million in water main replacements throughout the community. And as time goes on, that's really going to become our bread and always has to be our bread and butter, and will continue to be our bread and butter. Of just we have very old infrastructure on the ground that needs to be replaced over time, and there's a lot of that in this budget and will be in future budgets. The majority of the parks construction budget is for the Minto Island Pedestrian Bridge and Trail project, but the budget also includes funds for parks master planning and pre-development work, the Riverfront Park site improvements, and Minto Brown Island Park trail improvements, among others. Now, before I conclude my presentation, I want to highlight key issues in two of our operating funds, and one of them is the Watch Fund that City Manager talked about, Fund 155, but I also want to talk about the Water and Sewer Fund. The Water Sewer Fund is in good shape. However, small annual rate increases are required to keep pace with inflation and to maintain the financial health of the city's utility. In the fall, we will be before council with our biennial rate proposal, and the proposal will be affected by three factors. The first is we continue to see declines in water consumption, and you see kind of the history there. You can't read the bottom, but that goes from about 1992 through about 2000, and then we've seen the drops from 2000 to present day. The utility continues to have a substantial debt service, and you see that summarized at the top of the chart. The $22 million in debt service this year for the utility represents 30% of our rate revenue, so it is a substantial debt service, and you see how it starts to decline, but it'll still be substantial for several years. And of course, the utility has continuing need for capital maintenance and improvement projects. Our goal is to increase annual capital funding at roughly the same pace as the decline of the debt service payments. We are doing this in hopes of addressing the utility's capital needs without incurring additional debt, which is still substantial. As always, I appreciate the City Council's understanding of the utility's financial issues and the Council's commitment to keeping the utility in financial stability. The second issue relates to the streets operations and maintenance. The proposed transportation services budget is not sufficient to fund the basic surface transportation needs of our community. Proposed reductions in streets maintenance and traffic investigation services are in response to revenues not keeping up with increased personnel and materials costs. The table here illustrates how gas tax revenues have remained flat as general fund support for transportation services has declined over the past 5 years. As the city manager indicated in her presentation just a few moments ago and in her 5-year forecast earlier in the year, beyond this proposed budget, we project additional reductions in services and staffing in the coming in fiscal 2016 and in future fiscal years. I will tell you that this streets maintenance has always needed an infusion of other cash. In this community, we have never been able to maintain our streets at any kind and operate them at any kind of level with just the state gas tax allocation to the city. So as we've seen the general fund reduction, as you see here, that's what's created, that lack of additional revenue has created the problem that we have. Lack of funding for streets and maintenance is not a new issue. Over the past several years, we have balanced our budget with a combination of extraordinary saving efforts and, for the most part, reductions in pavement maintenance. The chart illustrates the significant reduction in these activities over the last 4 years, as well as our projected pavement maintenance activity for the next year. At the current pace of funding, and this is in this coming year's budget, it would take us 240 years to perform one maintenance cycle in our entire street inventory. So we're just really reducing the amount of pavement maintenance that we're doing in the community. Deferred pavement maintenance has been our savings method of choice. We have balanced the budget in this manner because it is unsafe to deactivate traffic signals, turn off street lights, or fail to replace missing or damaged traffic control devices such as stop signs. Those are things that we simply can't do a lot of cutting in, so deferred maintenance becomes our savings of choice. This coming year, though, we are left with no choice but to propose cuts in signs and marking maintenance activities and in traffic investigations. So we do have to start cutting into that part of our operation as well. Transportation services needs new revenue. The state gas tax revenue in and of itself does not fully fund the city's most basic transportation needs. In the past, general fund allocations helped supplement streets maintenance. Although we make every effort to control costs, inflation continues to outpace revenues. Really no different than what's happening in the general fund. Last year, council held a public hearing on the proposed streetlight fee. Streetlight operation and maintenance represents $1.4 million expense to the transportation services budget. If implemented, the fee would stabilize the Public Works Fund and allow us to resume a modicum of pavement maintenance services in the community. Council can consider other revenue sources, such as a local option gas tax or a street maintenance fee. Staff, however, continues to recommend the streetlight fee as the simplest and most transparent method of addressing the fund's revenue shortfall. This concludes my presentation. In closing, I want to acknowledge and thank the analyst team that put our budget together. I want to thank all of our dedicated employees for their excellent work. Many of them, I think just about everybody in the room, except for a couple of people, are Public Works staff. I want, in closing, to acknowledge 2 people that this will be their last budget presentation, at least one of them in the Public Works Department. One is Deborah Hildebrandt, our Customer Services Manager, who on Monday will become the Court Administrator. So she's moving to City Hall, and I thank her personally for the great work that she's done in customer service for the last 14 years. So it's been terrific, and we wish her the best of luck. And the other one is Vicki Clark, who is sitting here behind me. Vicki retired a few months ago, but she is committed to seeing us through. So she's here tonight. She'll be here, I think, next week, and she'll be here for the public hearing on May 27th. Vicki's been our budget analyst the whole time that I've been director and assistant director, and she served the city of Salem for 32 years, 30 of which in the Public Works Department. So I thank her for her great career at the city and for her help to me personally on doing that, doing the budget. And then I want to thank all of our dedicated employees for their excellent work and the excellent services that they provide the community throughout the year. I always take the opportunity here in my budget presentation to say that. So with that, I thank you for your attention tonight, and I am ready to answer your questions.
Thank you, Public Works Director Peter Fernandez. Next on our agenda, 6B, questions. Okay, we do questions first. Councilor Bennett and then Councilor Dickey.
Well, just a couple. Well, you really dropped a bomb telling us Deborah is leaving. She's the person we all refer our
Oh, yes.
concerns too. Does this mean they come to you now as our constituents?
You can
Your
call
private
Deborah, you can call
member,
Deborah at court.
Yeah. I had a chance today to talk with the chairman of the school board, and we talked a little bit about our school fields. What's going on with maintenance, sort of ongoing maintenance, mowing, et cetera, of our sort of shared recreation fields? It sounded from his comments like we have some either misunderstanding or confusion or something going on in terms of whether or not these facilities will be available to young people.
Right.
At reasonable fees.
Sure. There's a couple of issues going on. At the most basic level, we have had a partnership with the school district for many, many, many years, long before Parks was in Public Works. And we have a very old operating agreement with the school district. Through the years, there's been a lot of mixing and matching in school facilities where some of those facilities are really Parks properties, some of the Parks properties are really school district facilities. So the Mark Bechtel and his staff have been working with the school district facilities folks for 3-4 years now, trying to disentangle that and creating a new agreement where things are clearer and who has what responsibility. So we're trying to clarify. There is some confusion, and we're trying to clarify that confusion. So that's at the most basic level. The issue that we have with recreation is that with the high schools, the high school facilities are managed by athletic directors at each of the high schools. Athletic directors have a commitment to their athletic programs, and it simply has become untenable over the last 2 years being able to schedule activities at high school facilities. So one of the things that we've done is we simply do not schedule high school facilities anymore. We have staff that do schedule all the elementary and middle school facilities when schools are not in session. So we have left that for the high school athletic directors to address at each of the high schools. But at the other facilities, we continue to schedule those and are trying to do the best job that we can in managing various organizations and activities at a reasonable cost.
Are we continuing to talk with them then to get this sorted out?
Yes, I think we're pretty well settled on the high school side. And of course, the high schools have, the biggest facilities. There we had a lot of conversations, and the result was that we came to a mutual agreement that the athletic directors would simply take that portion on. But at the elementary and middle school level, we continue to do it, and any work that we do envisions that we would continue to provide that service to the community.
Just to be real parochial, does this include Barrick Field then? Is that a high school?
Yeah, that's a high school field.
We do have some work to do then on this further, it sounds like.
We have not completed the rework of the agreement with the school district.
I have a whole series. I'll just ask one more and then catch it again as we go around the horn here. I'm looking at page 1 of your budget. Under permits and fees, where you're looking at your fund by category, it just from 2010 to 2014 is this dramatic drop in permits and fees. Is that from the economy? What caused that? It's like $800,000.
No, I'm going to guess that was because of engineering. Yeah. So some of that money moved to Fund 310 because it was really related to engineering. So if you look on top, engineering moved from 155 to 310 in 12-13.
Okay.
So the dramatic drop was that. I think there's been some slowdown in permits and fees, but it isn't that dramatic. That the dramatic drop is really the reorganization.
Okay, great, thank you.
Member Dickey.
Thank you. Can you help me understand where the Salem Parks Improvement Fund is in here? I was looking for it and I couldn't find it.
It's in page 70. It's been whispered in my ear that it's in page 70. It's the very top of the page where it says Salem Park Improvement Funds. It's in the part of the construction budget. 70 in book 2.
Okay, so,
It's in in the construction budget. And you'll see there the projects that are listed, and then the funding on the facing page.
okay, so has that stayed the same? Or has it changed?
I think a lot of those are. Right, so there's some carryover projects from the current year that aren't completed yet.
Okay, so that, it's just higher because there are funds, there are some projects that haven't, that.
Right, so
okay.
there's both the whatever the new money is, and then the carryover money, so that we have the authority to finish the projects.
Okay, so we're still allocating the same amount that we were before?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, and Member Dickey, if you look at page 93 of Book 1, and in non-departmental, you'll find the 60,000 for the Salem Park Improvement Fund grants for next year, and that's the same amount we've been budgeting for many years. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mark was just whispering in my ear that these monies also include the local match, so the other monies that are being raised are also in here.
Member Wildfang.
On page 20 in your number 2 book, I see where we cut staff by 4 in
Right.
11, 12, but then the personnel services and the expenditures increased 400,000.
Yeah.
It looks like overtime or?
No, that's health insurance, that's PERS, that's all those other things that go, the raises that are bargained, that are in our bargaining agreements. So that's exactly the issue, is costs continue to increase even though the number of staff does not.
So on line 20, 30, and 80 and 90, what are those? Those don't look like.
I'm sorry, 51230, is that what you're?
Right.
That's our allocation of unemployment insurance.
Seasonal relief, is that?
Let me look. 020. That is money that we allocate for seasonal employees. So when we do pavement in the summertime, or when we use crew.
Temporaries?
Oh, not in this fund. Not in this fund. Prison crews. The seasonal, on this page, it's all this is parks operations. Okay, so that's one thing so if you look at the very top, it says Public Works, Cost Center, Parks. So 020, the second line, 796,000, are all seasonal employees. So these are not full-time employees. These are people that come on as we need them, primarily in the spring and summertime.
So, just to follow up, is that a direct result of reduced staffing then?
The way we have addressed, especially in parks, is a tremendous amount of, over the years, for many years, tremendous amount of volunteers, tens of thousands of volunteer hours, prison crews that come out. We were the first, and I think are still the biggest user of prison crews, and then just seasonal staffing as they come on. And that's one way to soften the cost. We're not using FTEs year-round. We're using seasonal help as needed.
Sorry to belabor it, because I'm just a rookie. Sure. So the differential.
Happy to be here.
The differential in the incentive, what are those?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
090 and 100, differential pay and incentives. I'm not sure. Oh, okay, so shift work, working out of class, so
Right.
somebody that's covering at a higher rate, we budget for those. Yeah, and you'll see those throughout. That line item is a standard line item, and they have different amounts in different locations. You
Right.
bet. It's a lot of line items.
Member Gonzalez.
Yeah, Peter, how are you? Good to see you. When can we see some options for future street revenue? You mentioned there was. When can we expect?
Sure. We think, we're hopeful to come back this summer and talk to City Council about the revenue issue. It's something we've been talking about for a number of years. I was looking at my last 5 years' worth of presentations, and I've made the same comment every year because we see the continuing issue. We proposed a streetlight fee. We think the streetlight fee is today what happens is, we get the gas tax, but the gas tax is, and some other revenues, gas tax is the primary one, but the gas tax is not just paying for streets, maintenance and operation, but it's also paying for the street light, for the electricity and the maintenance of street lights. It's paying for the maintenance of street trees. So those are two items that aren't directly going into asphalt or concrete or signals or that kind of thing. So we've talked for many years about the opportunity to move streetlights as a very discrete piece out of this fund and put it in its own fund. Well, the money has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just disappear. So that's when I say that it's the most transparent. It's one where we can talk to people and say, look, streetlights, for example, in Kaiser, people pay $40, $50 a year in their property taxes. There's a line item for streetlight districts. Salem doesn't have streetlight districts. So what we're talking about is, in essence, creating that, and that would balance the Public Works Fund, the streets part of the Public Works Fund. That would automatically add $1.4 million because we'd be saving it. Now, I got to tell you that as we look at it, that'll just stabilize it. Over time, we'll probably need more, but I'm not a greedy person. So we need to stabilize first. That will set us for a while, and then we can move on. Over the years, I've been here 19 years. I was the transportation manager when I first started here. We've talked about a local option gas tax. Well, boy, if Kaiser doesn't do it, if Marion County doesn't do it, the issues about Lancaster Drive, and on one corner they'd pay the big gas tax, and on the other corner they wouldn't. We've talked about other types of street utility fees and other things, and they've all kind of come and gone, and there's always a reason why they don't work. So that's why we continue to believe that the streetlight fee is probably the simplest, cleanest, most direct. People can conceptualize it. Hey, you got to pay for the street lights. This is how you'll pay for them. But we're open to other options.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions from Mr. Fernandez?
I have a couple. Looking on pages 90, 91, I'm looking at the Police Civic Center bond feasibility assessment at $80,000. Is that what?
It's an allocation of money for...
Excuse me, Mr. Fernandez. This is, since council won't be addressing this issue probably until, late May or June again, we put some additional funds in case we need additional engineering studies or engineering time or soil analysis or something of that sort. So it's really a placeholder that we have an allocation in. If we don't end up using it, it'll just roll to the ending fund balance.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And then at the bottom of that same page is an unspecified ADA improvement. Is this the problem down in the parking garage, down in the basement?
Well, there's a couple of issues in the parking garages as well as around the library. And so we're making sure that we're providing the kind of ADA ramps and accessibility requirements that we need. This particular one for $34,460, there are a couple of water fountains. I think there's one here in the chambers that needs to be a few inches higher. There are some doorknobs that need to be a different type of doorknobs. There are a number of small things that we need to do to make sure that we're staying compliant with our Americans with Disability Act requirements.
Okay, thank you. Then on page 102, 103, is the Salem River Crossing Environmental Impact Statement for $105,000 at the top of the page. Is this the final payment on that EIS? And then what's the total spending on that EIS bid? I'm just curious if you can say it off the top of your head.
I think it's $5.3 million total EIS to date.
To date that's been spent, but that's federal mostly.
Right, and then we've spent
About 300,000.
About 300,000.
So of our funds, city funds, 300,000, not 7 million.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, most of it is not our funds.
Okay.
So this is, we have the land use, we're getting close to publishing a final EIS. Before we can publish the final EIS, we need to do the land use, the state land use approvals. So we're in active discussions now with the state agencies on how best to address that piece of it. So we're still hopeful that we can get to council sometime this year, if we can conclude that piece of it, so that the council can amend the transportation system plan, which would be the final step to then publishing the final EIS.
Well, I appreciate your clarifying the spending. This has been so misstated during this
Yes.
campaign season by candidates and others that I really think it's important to understand what actually is going on here, and that in fact we're not taking money away from streets or sidewalks or anything else to accomplish this.
No, in fact, the bridge, because it's a new facility, it's eligible for systems development charge funds. And so the funding, the city's funding portion has always come, as you see it here, from SDC funds. So they're not coming from gas taxes, they're not coming from maintenance monies. These are in fact monies that are allocated for new facilities, and this is a planning for a major new facility.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. You have unspecified down in number, it'd be, I don't know, 9510, unspecified pedestrian safety crossings and traffic calming.
Yes.
Are those, how will those be determined, or have they been determined yet?
Some of those have all been determined. Yeah, we went through a process of, and we've engaged neighborhood associations and the public when all of these projects that were allocations for these kinds of things in the bond. We went out to the public and asked for suggestions, and they were ranked based on a variety of criteria.
Would it be a big deal to provide us a list of where?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
That would be helpful. These have been extremely popular.
Yes.
I think always of the two, I always think of the flashing yellow lights on Court in front of the Capitol.
Yes.
And particularly the one on 12th Street has been
Yes.
wildly successful.
Yes.
Well used and well respected.
Yes.
It's gone extremely
Yes,
well.
they're really helpful. The 17th Street median, the Mission Street median, the flashing signals out here, they're all working very, very well, and I think we're really improving pedestrian safety in the community. Yeah, we really like those projects.
Yeah, I thought those have been, for Public Works, one of the real, in that kind of pedestrian safety, which is tricky at times to
Yes.
figure out how to accomplish it, just very successful. On 104, 105, right-of-way purchase for the new Willamette River Bridge and the Marine Drive Northwest.
What
What
project?
bridge?
What project number, Counselor?
It's number 503.
Okay, project number 16 there.
Yeah. Is that mainly for Marine Drive? What?
This is, remember the 2008 Streets and Bridges bond measure had an allocation.
Okay.
And this is simply the description of that allocation. We've been having conversations of, are we going to build a piece of Marine Drive? Are we going to buy the right-of-way for Marine Drive? The last meeting of the council subcommittee, we had the discussion, and the recommendation and what the subcommittee ultimately decided is that we just need to wait. We're really a couple of years out. There's no hurry to spend this portion of the bond measure until we have the final EIS, so that we really know exactly what we need to acquire.
So this is a placeholder, or?
No, this is real money.
This is real money.
This is the last of the general obligation bond money. That is one of the original projects listed in the bond. So that is the allocation for this item. So my guess is it'll be here in this budget, and you'll probably see it here in next year's budget as well.
So this isn't a signal that we're starting to move forward on Marine Drive, or?
No.
No. Okay.
No, we could. So, for example, if we had, and it was some of the discussion that we had at the committee meeting with the counselors, if there was an opportunity to, a property owner came forward and said, hey, look, Marine Drive goes right by here, I want you to buy it from me, then we could send our real estate folks, and with this money, go ahead and purchase it. But there is no, we don't anticipate any movement in this coming fiscal year on Marine Drive.
Okay, thank you. And then, if anyone else has, just tell me to shut up. I just had a series. I have no problem stopping on these, but as I read through this, I noticed a lot of projects that were of interest to me. Number 500 Fisher Northeast, shooting through from Market to Sunnyview. Where's it going? 700 feet. I'm just thinking about that.
Yes, this is a project that we have had on the books for a very long time. The Power Auto Group built
Right.
the first piece of it when they came in, and this money actually is so we can start the completion that'll go from where the power improvement ends over at the church all the way to the signal on Market Street by the Fred Meyer.
So how will it connect to Sunnyview? What will that, will it?
Oh, Fisher already comes south of Sunnyview.
Okay.
And it
Then you
goes by the
catch it
old
there.
bowling alley. It takes that 90-degree turn and
Okay.
stops.
Okay.
We're going to pick it up from there, take another 90-degree turn, and come to the signal at Market Street. So that it's when ODOT built the new interchange, the new Diamond underneath Diamond, they cut off Fisher Road.
Right.
So we've had this project for on the books for years. In fact, when Fred Meyer came in to build that signal 12 years ago, we already had this idea that the signal needed to be in just the right place so that Fisher Road extension could go in. So we finally, Power Auto Group, to their tremendous credit, worked with us, really built a chunk of it so that now what's missing is actually pretty affordable, that we can get it finished.
Number 28 is Fairgrounds Road at Hood. That's our divider.
Counselor, that is your project.
Excellent. I just want to make sure. I wanted to underline that. That's Bennett's project.
That is, oh yeah, is that, when are we bidding now? It's advertised now. We're going to construct that very soon, and we're really excited about that. The council president and I are speaking in code. This is this is a median on Fairgrounds Road. In essence, it's a safety project to protect the church from that corner of the church has been hit several times. They were in danger of losing their property insurance, and so we came up with a project that would basically, we hope, slow traffic down, but if somebody hits the intersection wrong, would hit the median and stay in the road instead of hitting the building. Unfortunately, the last person who hit that building was killed. So I say it in jest that we're saving the church. We're really hopefully we'll save lives with that project.
That's great. I'm glad to see that, obviously, happening. And then finally, on 108, 109, one that is very important in my ward, I think to other wards as well, is 509, the railroad crossing.
Yes.
This is the quiet zone.
Yes, sir.
That correct?
Yes, sir. Those are the improvements to extend the quiet zone north.
And will that be occurring then this construction year or next construction?
Yeah, so we are actively working with ODOT Rail and the railroad to confirm the improvements that we're going to do. We are designing.
Design 2007.
Is our planned construction, right? So we'll be designing probably late next budget year in hopes of bidding, in 2016 to construct in 2017. Because these projects such as this one, were already approved by the council. They come directly to the, we don't pull them back into the CIP. They come directly to the budget. So this is one that you'll probably see again next year.
Okay.
But again, if we have situations where we need to front some money to the railroad for their piece, or we need to do a small right-of-way acquisition, or any kinds of issues like that, this money being in the budget allows us to move forward with that project, with pieces of that project.
Great. Well, this is certainly one I know for myself, and Councilor Dickey is
Yes.
And Councilor Tesler, very big.
Yes.
Seeing this, running from Hines to Hyacinth, is that where we'll be, or how?
Not quite to Hyacinth.
Not quite.
Not quite to Hyacinth. Yeah, in fact, I was at Salem Clinic this morning, and I heard the train blowing, and I'm thinking, why is the train blowing its whistle? And then I remembered, yeah, we're missing a piece right here. That's where they blow, so.
Yeah, I remember that every morning about 4:30.
Yes. Yes.
When we just missed Market Street,
Yes,
you know
it's
the
coming.
problem.
It's
Yeah.
coming. It's
Okay.
coming. The money's
Okay.
allocated, and
Okay.
it's actively being worked on. It's
Okay.
coming.
Great, thank you. This was just a
Thank you,
really good
Councilor.
budget. And I want to tell you how, from my perspective, having done budget for a number of years, this was just very, very clear.
Thank you.
Vicki did a great job again.
Thank you. We have great management analysts, and then it all rolls up to Vicki, and it's just been terrific for all these years, and we anticipate that'll continue to be terrific with Alicia Blaylock. We'll be doing it next year.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Peterson.
Thank you very much. I have a question that might be for Mr. Fernandez, but it might also be for City Manager Norris. It's kind of a two-part question. It has to do with fleet and leasing as opposed to purchasing. And then also, where are we with replacement of equipment, particularly in public works? I know that a lot of that equipment is very specialized. You don't buy dozens of them, but they're very specialized pieces of equipment that we do need, maybe not year-round, but seasonally.
So you want me to start with the specific?
Sure.
And then,
Okay.
So the specific is that, we work closely with fleet to determine when equipment is worth replacing. Some equipment is old, but with few hours, so we don't replace that until, it's time for it to be replaced. Again, because we are a vast operation, the utility has, the resources to replace our equipment as necessary. Streets and parks, replace, that equipment runs a little longer because we simply don't have the capital to replace it as often. So we just maintain it longer, even though it might be beyond its useful life. I will tell you a great story. We needed a flail mower, and Fleet, which we were looking at, $170,000 piece of equipment. Fleet found one with very low hours that the city of Lebanon had. It was too big for them, and we ended up, I think we're getting ready to purchase it for $40,000.
Great.
So we do, Fleet does do that, and we are open to those kinds of opportunities. Sometimes it's just better to buy new. In terms of leasing, we use our equipment. Our history has been that we use our equipment till we don't need it anymore, till it can't be used anymore. However, we are looking at opportunities, and John Dunn at Fleet is doing a good job of thinking about and experimenting with, are there certain pieces of equipment that might be better leased? And if we find those opportunities, we'll certainly jump on them.
Okay, good, thanks. Yeah.
That's what I would add too. Deborah Bond is actually the department head over Fleet Services, and we embarked a couple of years ago on a 3 or 4 year project to really, I want to just say, clarify the rates that are going into Fleet and really analyze very thoroughly how we're buying equipment, how we're using it, when we lease, when we purchase, how many hours it has. We're still in that process. We haven't completed the analysis yet. I think we know now it doesn't make sense to lease very specialized equipment, and so we're looking at sedans and those types of vehicles. And I think, Deborah, I don't know if you're prepared to respond now or if you want to do that when you give your budget presentation.
Thank you, City Manager. Mayor Peterson, I think it would be best a discussion next week when we do talk about the fleet replacement schedule we have in the budget for this year, as well as what we have done so far. If you recall, last year was our first year using actually a separation of fleet services funds from the equipment replacement funds. So you as a council, as well as the budget committee, can see what is actually now beginning to be built up in the replacement funding. We are still woefully underfunded there and constrained for many, many good reasons. But we are still maintaining a very close and efficient look at what really needs to be replaced in a year. and particularly in the specialized equipment that Peter talked about, they have longer lives too. Some of this is 15, 20 years we may keep a piece of equipment on that. So again, they don't benefit very much from a leasing type of option as they do really looking at reserving those monies over years to be able to pay them outright when we buy them. So we're still looking at many, many ways to service the entire city fleet, and we can talk more about that next week.
Okay.
We have we have a fleet users group that's several of the department heads where we talk about this periodically and really go through this in quite a bit of detail to decide what's the best way to budget and what's the best way to purchase these vehicles and these pieces of equipment.
Yeah, I well remember the discussions we've had about this in years past, and I was just wondering if this year we're going to hear any particularly new information about fleet leasing versus purchasing, and if that's next week, that's fine, but I just would be curious to know if we're going to have some kind of a update on that.
We haven't finished the entire analysis yet, but we can tell you where we are at this point and what we're doing next.
Good, okay.
If I can just
you.
add to that, yes, we're pretty much still at the planning stages, because part of what happens in leasing is looking at even just financing, and we intend as part of our plan this summer in particular is look at what kind of options do we have in a leasing as well as financing on our own. So
Good.
we will have some of that we can bring forward next week.
Good, thanks.
Are there, yes, Member Danke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we actually talked a couple weeks ago on it, and then I heard you mention tonight Upper Bennett Dam.
Yes.
What are we doing there?
So Upper Bennett Dam has a pretty substantial void underneath it. So we're going to go in and fill that void, and then we're going to lay out a new rock bed to hopefully will hold it so that new voids aren't created underneath it.
And is that the fish ladder, or is that
No,
lower?
that's the actual
But
dam.
The fish
ladder is on the
associated with Upper.
The fish ladder is on the south side of Upper Bennett Dam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. It's named after Chuck's relative.
Yeah, great.
I don't know
Although
if
I do spend a lot
if he
of
was
time-
the Upper Bennett family or the Lower Bennett
Yes.
family. It's two dams there.
I do spend a lot of time up there, and I did wonder about fish passage as well as boat passage. I hear quite a bit from Mr. Sanderson up in Mill City about this apparently thinking that I am somehow related to the dam. But can you explain what's going to happen then relative to boat and fish passage as a result of this? I mean, we're having some scale problems with fish. We're having
No,
some
the fish passage is fine. We built that fish ladder 9 years ago. So the fish ladder was built to the modern standard of the day. So the fish ladder is on the south side of the dam on the Lynn County side, and it's in good shape. The boat slide, which is on the island side, does have some issues with it. It probably needs some repair work, especially.
Was that part of this?
No, it is not part of that project. What we have is that this is a very old dam. This is an old, rock and timber dam that was then wrapped in concrete. And what we have discovered is that there is a very substantial hole underneath the dam that's just been scoured out by this is the kind of dam that the water flows over it. So it just sends water north, but for the most part, water just goes over it. So there's substantial scour, and we need to fix that hole, or we run the risk of the dam not being there. So
You do, and I know you know, but I want to just remind you again that the complaint is that the scouring and holes are beginning to develop in the bottom of those drift boats that are going over the dam, and whether or not there is some way to deal with that, I think would be certainly appreciated up for those that are heavy users of that river.
Yes. We recognize that there are issues with the boat slide there, and we'll see if we can do. That's not a major repair. That's a relatively simple repair. I think some of the boards towards the bottom are missing and need to be repaired. So.
That'd be great.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Fernandez? Member Berger.
This is a general understanding question. In Kaiser, they pay their own water fees, but they're paying into our sewer fee?
That's correct. Kaiser drinks their own groundwater, but they're part of our sewerage system.
And do they charge, my understanding is we charge ourselves a franchise utility fee for use of our roads. Are they charging our sewer for the use of their roads?
We do not pay a franchise in Kaiser. I think Kaiser charges a franchise fee of their own, which they put on their bill. So they charge themselves a franchise like we charge ourselves a franchise.
On their sewer bills?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, on their
so
utility
it's not
bills.
run through our budget, it's run through their budget?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We're not collecting individually,
No.
we collect a big check from
No,
them?
we only charge, the franchise fee is only collected inside of the city of Salem, and the city of Salem utility does not pay a franchise to Marion County or the city of Kaiser or the city of Turner, where there are, other facilities.
Thank you.
All right, last chance. Any other questions for Mr. Fernandez? All right, next on the agenda is public testimony concerning the public funds, Public Works Fund budget. I have one person signed up, Mr. Scott Bassett. The microphone is yours. You have 3 minutes. After 2 minutes, the orange light will come on, indicating there's 1 minute left. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee. I have 5 quick questions. I would like to know if how much is planned for the Minto Brown Island Park restoration of the cherry tree orchard, and if that money is discretionary and could be used on other things. Second question is, I know that I've heard that there's quite a difference in how Public Works protects the drinking water that comes into our drinking water system, in contrast to what EWEB does. And I'm told that there were a couple of positions cut that used to be responsible for water quality, and that those have been cut. And I just wanted to understand what they did and how our spill response for the North Santiam compares to the McKenzie River. Next question is, how much is flood mitigation, what is the total cost of needs, and how does that compare to revenues? And then my last question is on deferred maintenance. How much is waiting going to cost us on not doing the basic street deferred maintenance? How much does that increase our future liability each year? And because the yellow light isn't on, I'll just add another question, and that is, out of the planning for the Salem alternative, is it true that there are $6 million planned to be spent on discretionary regional funding, and that only $1 million of that was federally earmarked, federal funds? So those are my questions. Thank you very much.
And we can either bring those, I think some of these we'll have to bring back to the next meeting, and some we can respond at the current time if staff is available.
Yeah, I can, at least the ones, I assume we'll bring back the Minto Bridge one and the second one. So, for drinking safety, the ones that I wrote down are the drinking water safety. We had 2 positions that spent the majority of their time up in the watershed. Our water is drawn from the North Santiam watershed. We do not own that watershed, but we work closely with the Forest Service and with USGS and the Corps, the U.S. Army Corps, because they manage the 2 dams. The 2 people that were in those positions left. We eliminated 1 position and then left 1 position to do that kind of testing for us. And what we're looking for is things like algae blooms and the general state of the water long before it comes to the water treatment facility at near Staten. So we actively look at that. We work with our partners. If there's any kind of spill issue, we get that reported to us and we respond to the spill. A couple of years ago, a tractor truck full of petroleum overturned on Highway 22, and our folks were up there inspecting and making sure that everything was picked up and that nothing was released into the North Santiam River. So we are very concerned, and will always be in a position of looking and protecting the watershed to the best of our ability. Flood mitigation needs versus revenues. Our flood needs are extensive. Our revenues are small. Can't give you an exact amount. We are actively working on updating our stormwater master plan. We're just on the throes of hiring a consultant to help us update it. When I talked about the large amount of debt that the utility carries, when we were actively doing projects in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we spent $300 million doing improvements to the utility, the next phase of improvements was going to be stormwater. And we're going to do a substantial number of stormwater and flood mitigation projects, and that's what had to be cut from the budget. So we really, stormwater has been our stepchild, our poor stepchild in the utility. It is something that we're actively doing now. We implemented the stormwater utility, and we recognize that there are a lot of needs in the area, so we're working on them. But I can't tell you from a needs to revenue. The needs are very, very large, and the revenues are very, very small. For deferred maintenance on streets, there is a chart that shows that if you wait more than 5 years to do active maintenance on a street, a seal, a slurry seal, whatever, it starts to decline very rapidly. The best way to talk about what this means to the community is the 2008 Streets and Bridges bond issue was a $100 million bond issue. 40%, $40 million had to go to pavement maintenance. And what we did was capital maintenance. So we scraped off 2 inches, we put it back, we repaired the sub-base where necessary, we installed sidewalks where they were missing. If we were maintaining our streets, then this capital money could go to other improvements like pedestrian safety improvements and widenings and other things instead of going to maintenance. If we don't do something, if we don't start to kick up our maintenance dollars, then it means that the next bond issue, we might have to do 50 or 60% to capital maintenance and a lot less for widenings and other improvements. So that really, it is a significant issue, and we do have statistics where we can tell you where we're at with asphalt. I mean, it's very boring, but it's the story is very bad. And then our regional funds for the third bridge, that is really an ODOT issue, so that really it's, in our budget is clear of what is there, so regional funds really have to be discussed with ODOT Region 2 staff and with Salem Kaiser Area Transportation Study staff at the Council of Governments. I think that covered it.
I think that was it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to give public testimony?
I think, Mr. Sturbuck, did you want to present now? Sure.
Mr. Starbuck, please state your name, your address, or ward for the record.
Well, actually, I live in Kaiser, but my name is Matt Starbuck. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the AFSCME Local 2067 President, Mayor Peterson, Manager Norris, City Council, Budget Committee. I'd like to thank everybody for their hard work on the budget. I know it's a lot of hard work and it's very difficult. I appreciate your diligence. This is Joseph West. He's our Council 75 representative also. And what I'd like to say at this meeting is that we plan on being a little more involved with the budget process, and so you may see me more, both of us more in the future. We would like to see the Fund 155 more stably funded, especially that's near and dear to our hearts, so in particular. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Starbuck. Are there any questions for Mr. Starbuck? No. Thank you. Discussion, review, and recommendation. Who wants to go first? Member Berger?
Chair, what is your intention for moving the budget forward? Do you intend to piecemeal and have each date actually make a motion and move it, a package forward? Or is the intention to wait until the end and do it all at once? This is my fourth time, and we've done it kind of different ways each time, slightly different, and I'm just wondering what the intention is. And that isn't necessarily a question for you. That could be a question for the rest of the Budget Committee. You're just on the chair, so I'll point it towards you.
Would that be more appropriate under number 8, possibly? I do have an opinion. I have lots of those, but this is not my show.
And that's fine if you want to discuss it over the larger. I'm just not sure if there's something that's being asked of us at this time when it says recommendation in the agenda, whether there's a request for a motion on this budget or not.
Okay. Member Klassen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a thought on Member Berger's question. I don't know that we, in practice, have gone through and made a recommendation of each individual portion of the budget to move it forward. This is the part usually where we start talking about a wish list and what do we want to see going into a wish list for a discussion at the end. So, you know, I guess what I'd be looking for maybe, or what I'd be expecting, and happy to hear from anybody else, but just some discussion, general discussion, if there's anything we'd like to see, you know, as a committee, and discuss different aspects of the budget. I know I, for one, I'm just looking at it for the first time tonight. And is this going to go on the website, by the way, City Manager?
It will be on the website as of when, Ms. Jacobs? Tomorrow.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
I just love that. I like that
Right.
format. It works well for me. But, so discussion and then placing any topics on the wish list would be appropriate at this point, would be my thought, and then as we kind of die out, move on to the next item. And potentially we might hold this one until the next meeting, since most of us are seeing it for the first time tonight. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Member Nanki.
Yeah, in actually taking a jump back, I was curious if we could actually get some kind of pricing on what it would take to actually do repairs on the boat ramp on Upper Bennett Dam.
Is that one of your requests to get pricing? Okay.
You can't put something on a wish list if you don't know how much it costs.
Okay. We'll do that.
Thanks.
Member Bednarz.
So how many more of these meetings do we have before we really do have to make a recommendation? Four more? So I think as Member Clausen had mentioned, we have these different hats. Anyway, as Member Clausen had mentioned, I don't think I'm ready yet at this point to pass any sort of motion in reference to what we presented tonight, not until I've seen a lot more of what's coming up in the budget.
Member Nanki.
Yeah, if I can just speak to that one as well. We used to do conditional approvals, and it didn't really mean anything. So we really haven't done anything except for if there's a wish list item, you handle it, and if nothing else, we wait till the final night and hash it out. As far as if there's items on the wish list or other items that come from staff that were unanticipated, or new funds have become available that we weren't aware of. I was like,
That would be nice.
Member Bennett.
Yeah, one of the things that was mentioned a couple of times tonight was the streetlight fee. Is there some intention to have this then reviewed by the Budget Committee, potentially take action and a recommendation to the council?
Typically, that type of revenue measure, if City Council wanted to move forward with looking at a revenue source again, we talked about it in the 5-year forecast, that this transportation budget is going to be in a serious problem starting this year and getting worse every year after if we don't look at a revenue source. That normally would come to the city council, though, as part of a work session, a discussion about whether you wanted us to move forward with an analysis and an analysis of what, and then how you wanted to handle it. Typically, the budget committee doesn't make recommendations on revenue sources.
Could the budget committee make a recommendation, though, if they?
I believe they could, yes.
Well, I think it would be helpful to have distributed then to the budget committee kind of what we have seen.
Okay.
I don't know what it looks, I don't even remember quite what it looked like in terms of the paperwork, but what it looked like on that streetlight fee, what it cost people, how it was collected. You know, is it in, as Al Gore would say, in a lockbox somewhere where it can't be spent on anything but street resurfacing? That kind of information I think would be helpful, just in case the committee wants to take a look at it.
Certainly. As you know, we had a public hearing last summer, early fall, and from the comments that were made at that public hearing, staff has reviewed the original recommendation again and tried to find ways to address some of the concerns that people raised, especially in terms of people who have very low income, how their situation might be mitigated somewhat. So we could bring back to you the analysis as it stands where we last left it, and then present that, give it to the budget committee, and see how you want to move forward with that.
I just think it would be helpful to have other eyes look at it than just the city council. Certainly. And particularly when people have had a chance to look at this budget, what it accomplishes and what it really doesn't accomplish, and then the dire, you know, if we do another bond measure, we might be actually asking for 50 million or more just to catch up for what we've missed. I mean, where we've got people looking at this, I think it'd be a good opportunity to talk about it.
We'll do that.
Or not.
Okay. Member Klassen and then Mayor Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a thought to Member Bennett. Would that be, it's kind of an odd request to put on a wish list, but maybe it would be better on a wish list, because just so that we don't bog the committee down at this point with a revenue measure which isn't part of the budget presentation for consideration. And the reason I would think it that way is then we get to the end and we can have a discussion about maybe reconvening after approval of the finalized budget for a look at that, because that's just an issue we need to look at in general, is street maintenance and how do we fund it?
Yeah,
would that make some sense?
I see what you're saying, and I think there would really, for the budget committee, there become a series of options that they can, if presented with the information, you know, the budget committee can decide to go at it almost any way it wants to, as the last night say, oh yeah, and by the way, we would recommend to the city council that it look carefully at a streetlight fee, or it pass a streetlight fee, or are you kidding, a streetlight fee? You know, whatever their, but this will be a group of citizens and councilors that will have spent time on a budget and have heard what it means, and I think understood it, or at least be able to ask people real directly questions about the implications of continuing on the road we're on over the next 5 to 10 years, what that means. And we rarely have that kind of forum assembled. And now we have one. So
Yes.
I am just saying, maybe we want to take it, maybe we don't. You know, this, we didn't when confronted with it, we punted forward. And I'm just saying, maybe it's time to have another look at it. It is coming back to us. It sounded like this summer, early fall, so. I just thought it might be helpful. But I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I don't want to bog this group down with this either, because it can be a real, it can be
Well,
a
that's
full
what I'm
meeting.
concerned about, is we have 4 more meetings, and I think we have a week or 2 of fluff just in case. And maybe it would be a separate meeting at some point, immediately following, you know, first week of June or something like that, just so maybe the budget committee has distributed the information that's been out for reading material, and then we get together for a staff presentation in the first week of June if the citizen members are willing, because I do agree with you. Having somebody who's got their head into the budget and understanding where we're at and what we're up against would be a great discussion.
Mayor Peterson, then
Thank you. My question has to do with some of the items that I think are in the area of the capital improvements, the CIP, and specifically the public, all of our public works shops that are out on 21st, 22nd, out in that area. And I'm not sure where I would find those in the budget. I can find the areas for specific other properties like the Gilbert House Children's Museum or the library, or, but I'm wondering where those would be in
Where
here.
the operating costs are for those buildings?
We could start with operating. We could talk about deferred maintenance or replacement of any of those facilities, those buildings.
Yes, we don't have any funds in the capital improvement program to replace any of those buildings. We do have a couple of projects here and there that would be in the facilities budget. I'm not recalling any, though, that have to do with public works or parks buildings for next year.
Okay, that's under municipal facilities, pages 90 and 91
Right,
in that area.
yeah.
Okay, well, that's where I was kind of thinking that there would be. So we actually don't have pages for every one of our facilities.
No, the construction budget will just be, we have the 5-year capital improvement project, which is over 5 years, what capital improvement projects do we anticipate doing?
Right.
And I'll tell you, there's no funding, and so there's no project into replacing any of those buildings out on 22nd and 23rd Street in the 5-year plan. Then the first year of the capital improvement program goes into the construction budget. So that's what you'll see in this budget. These are the things we're planning on either designing or constructing over the next year.
Okay.
We had, I think it was in about 2006, 2007, we had anticipated being able to build a new administration building for water and sewer, which I think is what you're thinking about.
Well, I do remember that, among other things.
Right.
Yeah.
And when the economy started to fall at that time, and you may recall that some of our underwriting firms that were holding our water and sewer debt were downgraded, as that happened across the country. We had to move millions of dollars into a reserve to make sure that we met our bonding requirements. And so we had to cancel that water and sewer project at that time. And since then, we've never had the funds available to take up that issue again. And in fact, previously, there was, I don't know, maybe now 10 or 15-year-old plan for how, a master plan for how that entire complex would be rebuilt. But at that time, people in the city were thinking about everybody having their own building. Water and sewer would have their own building. Parks would have their own building. Facilities would have their own building. And that ended. And at this point, when we're at the point where we can go forward, we have the funding that we can go forward with another building, we would take a much more comprehensive look at how we could save money, combine shops, combine administration facilities, and move forward. But we do not have any funding for that type of project at this time.
Okay, thank you. Well, I appreciate what you're saying. I've had the chance to, on several occasions, to go out to the shops and to visit the various departments out there and see some of the operations, daytime, nighttime, and I'm just painfully aware of the need in that area. And I would just like to see us put that into, bring back a desire for a plan and improvement of our shops, because they really are deteriorating, and the people who work in them are working under sometimes the most grueling weather and pressure situations, emergency response situations, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I want to say to people on the council and the budget committee members, if you've never been out to the shops and you've never really driven around or walked around out there, do so, because to me, they're as important in terms of facility as looking ahead for the police department and looking at our library needs and looking at the rest of the civic needs here. I don't want them to just be forgotten. I know I know, Lyndon Norris, you don't forget them. I know that. But I mean, in our sort of civic consciousness, I think we should be remembering that we have a responsibility to maintain all of our facilities as best we can.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that, Mayor, and I'm sure the staff who work out there appreciate that as well. It really gets to probably an issue of, for future bond measures, which things should be in what priority. We know we have a big need with the seismic stability here with the police facility. We know I think the Streets and Bridges bond only funded about a third of the costs that were identified at that time several years ago. We know we have many, many more projects to do there. Certainly the facilities at the shops area are another one. So we have an unlimited list, and certainly we can move forward with bringing to council maybe at the next council goal session that here are some priorities. I know council's also been concerned about a parks, some kind of parks bond as well.
Okay,
So,
good.
thank you.
Okay.
Member Berger.
On the street lighting issue, I would like to concur with Member Clausen that we probably shouldn't get bogged down in this budget cycle with that issue unless there's a burning desire from someone on this committee that believes that in next year's budget we need that revenue right now. If that is the case and someone puts a motion in a second, then I think it would be appropriate to discuss that as a budget committee. If it is a next year item, a future looking item, then waiting until we pass this budget and then getting some clear direction on the council on what they're asking us to look at, then that might be a future item. I've looked into this issue somewhat, and it's a complicated issue and there's a lot of factors. So simply taking a half a meeting and then saying budget committee, what do you think, it would be a tall order to ask the budget committee to do. So putting some parameters on what the council wants from the budget committee, what type of recommendation, are they just looking for input, or are they looking for an up or down vote? I'd like some of those things kind of set before we would spend time either way after this budget gets moved forward.
Member Bennett.
Yeah, I think that point's really well taken. I think one thing that might be helpful, because we're probably fact short right now, we've heard numbers. I think one of the most interesting documents since whoever headed John Elegant used to bring in pieces of the buildings from around the place to show us what was happening to all of the facilities in the city, has been Mr. Hildebrand's estimate of what the pothole, sidewalk, all of the street repair needs look like around the city. I think if we could have, if it's convenient for him and to kind of give us a sense, because I remember numbers like 130,000 problems, whether it's sidewalks or streets or whatever, for us to really at least grasp what we are not addressing in this budget. Just, I think, to answer the question you're asking, is it worth talking about? I think that'd be a helpful document to have.
We could give you an approximation. I can't tell you we can give you the exact number, but we can give you a number that will probably be frightening.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of what I thought it would look like, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Member Pruitt.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, speaking for myself, the idea of being able to do that and be a little proactive as a budget committee member, I would welcome that opportunity, obviously not here, but at a later point. And I think, having spoken to some of the other members, there's some interest here in being involved in that process in a future date.
So do we agree on how we handle the wish list and recommendations?
That would be the time if anyone wanted to make a wish list motion.
So, yes, what I think we want is keep a wish list on the side over the next couple of weeks, right? Stay away from recommendations for at least a little while until we have a bigger picture, and maybe use this time for additional questions if we have any for staff or any additional information or data. Does that sound about right? Wish list items, do they require a motion?
Yes, they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody feels moved to move? Member Bednarz.
I move that we as a committee, we form a wish list of items that we might add at the end when we vote on the budget.
Do I hear a second? Member Berger?
I second.
All right, that's a third. Right. So let me make sure let me just repeat it. You move that we establish a wish list, but you're not putting any item on there, right?
Not
Just the
tonight.
wish list. Okay. So moved by Member Bednarz and seconded by Member Berger. Any discussion? Sounds good. So anybody in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Any other motions? All right, while we're in the groove. All right, let's move on to the next item. Next on the agenda is the public hearing for state revenue sharing funds. Would staff please introduce the public hearing? Ms. Jacobs.
The public hearing this evening is the first of two that the city will, or actually is required to hold on the issue of state revenue sharing funds in the fiscal year 14-15 budget. The second hearing will be with the City Council in May. So this hearing, this one tonight, was noticed in the Statesman Journal on March 26, 2014. State revenue sharing funds are general purpose, which means the local government has discretion in how they're spent. But the city must identify possible uses and seek assistance from the public in doing so. It has been our practice in the past to recommend the use of these funds to offset the cost of police patrol services. And that would be our recommendation this evening as well. For your reference, the budget for police patrol services totals $18.5 million, and this the state revenue sharing is $1.5 million. So it's just a small offset for patrol services. The police budget that I've just mentioned to you is on page 16 of Volume 1. And then the assignment of state shared revenues to support police services appears on page R21, which is a revenue page in Book 1, in Volume 1 of your budget. So that's the hearing this evening. And of course, at the conclusion of the hearing, I will need a recommendation from the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. So,
We can open the public hearing.
okay, so I declare the public meeting open. Public hearing. Testimony. Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment? I have one person on the sign-up sheet.
It's from item 9.
Oh, that was item 9?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think we've ever had anyone.
No? This could be a first.
Who figured this one?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. What do we now?
So then, if there's no one speaking, we'll close the public hearing. Unless there are questions of staff.
Are there any questions for staff? Then I'm going to close the meeting.
And we need a motion.
The meeting is adjourned. The public hearing is adjourned. Now we need a motion, correct?
Right.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Member Bennett?
You want a motion?
Yes, please.
I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Member Bennett for staff recommendation and seconded by Member Bednarz. Is there any discussion? Member Clausen?
Could we have the staff recommendation repeated for me?
Yeah.
The staff recommendation would be to utilize these funds to support police patrol services.
So we're allocating the funds through approval of this as opposed to accepting the funds and then allocating them through
Actually,
approval of the budget?
what you're doing is saying that that would be the recommended use for these funds for the city of Salem. The Budget Committee's recommended use for the funds. The City Council will make a recommendation in May, a similar recommendation, I hope, in May. So this is just simply a motion to make this recommendation to use the funds in this manner.
Okay, so it's not a motion to accept the funds?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's where I was confused.
Member Nanki?
Thank you, Mr. And the budget document reflects that, which has been our past practice as well.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Any other comments? So we can vote, right? Okay. Do I have to repeat that motion again?
No, I think you're good.
Anybody, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
Your first public hearing, thank you.
Yes.
All right.
With your indulgence, Chair, could we take care of the one handout item as well on the agenda this evening?
It's on my list.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
So the handout item, it was left on your desk this evening, is an errata sheet. It's errata sheet number 1. During the budget process, we use errata sheets to provide you with updated information, to make budget corrections, or to make Scrivener corrections. This errata sheet is simply a Scrivener correction in Book 2, but because it involves a number, we wanted to ensure that it was corrected. So it seems like a pretty light item, but we wanted to have that corrected number, but it has no budget implications. We're fine budgetarily. So I just need a recommendation to approve the errata correction.
Okay.
To approve errata sheet number 1.
All right. Moved by Member Nanki and seconded by, who was, that was very close, by Member Clausen. Any discussion? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes. Are we ready to move on to item number 8? This will be the fun one. Goal setting and policy discussion. This is an opportunity for us to talk amongst ourselves, correct? Who wants to go first? Member Nanki.
Yeah, I think we already discussed the wish list, which is typically, unless there's some other procedurals, which we've pretty much already taken care of. I don't know. There's a lot hanging out there right now, but I know I have none.
Member Benjamin.
I'd just like to see, when it says goal setting, to try to see if we can focus a little bit more on the streets and sidewalks. That's the foot of the city, and that's what everybody sees first. And so I just want to keep that on top of mind on that.
Member Wildfang.
Just as a question, had the council previously discussed goals like this, or is this kind of a first-time conversation with it?
Yeah, first time.
Okay.
Member Clausen.
Thank you. As far as goals go, along with what Member Benjamin said, I do agree with the street maintenance. That highly concerns me. You know, if it was up to me, I would love to see us transferring money from the franchise fees that goes to general fund back out to transportation for maintenance. I would love to see it, but man, we made a tough decision. Was it 2 years ago now? Maybe a year ago.
You'd have to cut other general fund core services and police, fire,
it was tough. You lose
parks.
police and fire, or do you
Yeah.
lose street maintenance? And I'm not saying it's an easy decision. It's basically a decision we're making again this year, but I want to make sure we don't lose sight of that as a budget committee, because that's what those funds are collected for. Is we have utilities in our right-of-way, and they pay us for our right-of-way, and we're not maintaining our right-of-way with the money that's being paid to us. And that's a little frustrating to me still, and I would love to see us go back to doing that. But we're in a tough spot right now, and you know, I just want to make sure we don't lose that as a budget committee, because that's something we need to keep thinking about as hopefully the economy turns back around.
Right. And the franchise fees are really for the use of the public right-of-way. In this state, we tend to fund streets and sidewalks with state highway revenue, and that's really not meeting our needs. Yeah.
Member Bednarz.
This is my second year of doing the budget, and what I learned after the first year was that I did not need to dig into the details necessarily of all the numbers that are in the book, and it was much more important to dig in with the policy setting. And it was my comment last year, it seemed to me that council needed to set policies. The policies that we set last fall or last summer were the policies that would be reflected in this budget, and it takes that long to implement it. And I say again that we need to make sure that our city manager, Ms. Norris, is getting this information so that she can put it in, and the rest of the staff is getting the information, what is important to the council side, and then what's important to the policy of the budget committee. And that's, I think, one of the things we need to keep in mind at this point. What do we want to accomplish? What is it? It's not just pushing numbers around. We're going to leave that to the staff because it's their thing. But we've got to figure out what we want within this committee. So it's a two-double thing here. One is council side, and the other one is the budget committee side. Both have to be thinking about policy.
Thank you. Member Nanki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and there's definite roles between each of those two bodies in regards to street maintenance, and we've seen it as we've approved the budget as it's moved down or moved things around here or there. Streets is a tough one. A lot of money. I sat on the original Save Our Streets where we actually recommended and council approved starting to move that franchise money aside, but there's really not a nexus between franchise fees. Otherwise, we would use, PG to take care of street lights and stuff because it's kind of running above the street. So franchise fees are general revenue for the general fund, and they're not specified. We've moved those back and forth between standard general fund and street maintenance a couple of times over the years, depending on how flush the general fund was. But I know that deferred maintenance, especially in the streets arena, is a screamer cost escalator over time. And once your street starts going, again, if you don't catch it right, we used to do tons of slurry seals back, 10, 20 years ago. And you don't see those now. And those roads will fail much, much sooner. And it costs a heck of a lot more money to replace, even, dig the main chunk of the street out than to actually take care of it and extend its life out there. So
Right. It really just takes a couple of bad weather years.
Yeah.
If you're not doing any preventative maintenance before you have pretty significant failure of your
and this
street
winter
system.
in and of itself was,
Right.
I actually came across the bridge for the first time in a long time, and the road coming up and over even, that was just awful.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, big holes and splits and
We're
but we
very
did get a nice
concerned.
email that we got a nice pothole fixed. And
Member Berger.
Question, an issue that the council has dealt with recently that I read about in the paper. I wasn't there for the actual discussion. The raises to non-represented employees. I'm just wondering what the total budget impact was in this budget to those raises.
No, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we can bring it to the next meeting. We have it. I just don't have it in my head.
Member Gonzalez.
I just to piggyback what everybody's saying, when my aunt came down from Mexico City, she was impressed with one thing. She just couldn't get over how nice our streets were. She just couldn't get over. She just kept talking about them, how smooth and so that's what I don't want us to become. But the other thing, when we do budgets in our business and our household, you're looking at expenses, how to control those. You're also looking at revenue and how to increase it. So as I'm looking at the organization, organogram that we have here for the city of Salem, I wonder how much our committee interfaces with the Cultural and Tourism Promotion Board. Are they interfacing with the neighborhood associations? That we're on the same page and we're setting some big goals on how to increase, how to get creative and come up with different ways on how to work together to bring in additional revenue. That'd be neat to see.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. I do serve on the Salem Travel Board and the Executive Committee, as does John Wales, the head of our Urban Development Department. And we are talking much more collaboratively and being more strategic in aligning the goals for the city in terms of recreation as well as the visitor enhancements. And I think that we're requiring more of Travel Salem to be in line with what the city's goals are, and looking at the city's assets and seeing how we can really capitalize on what we have, and looking forward to the bridge that's going to go over to Minto Brown Island, and talking with Travel Salem about making recreation and natural resources a part of their strategic goals as well as ours, as we try to maximize really what we're going to be enhancing in our three major city parks downtown, Minto and Riverfront and Wallace. That's just one example example of how we're trying to dovetail a little better.
You know, and just to follow up on my comment, you know, of all the people I've dealt with that have chosen Salem to live here and do business here, it all started with them visiting.
It all started with
It all
what?
started with them visiting, having
Yes,
a reason
uh-huh.
to visit, and that led to them picking Salem for their
Yeah,
home and
it's
business. So
important.
that's why I think it's important.
Great, good point, thank you.
Next, Member Nanki, then Member Bednar.
Yeah, and we didn't have the benefit this year when we've struggled to try to actually get a council goal setting
Yes.
Yeah, not yet.
put together, which actually drives some of that budget process as well. We'll have 5 new councilors sitting here in a little over half a year, which will kind of change goals potentially as well. Oh,
4.
4. There's 5 people up for election, but
Right. Well, yes. Thank you, Councillor Nanki.
4 of them most definitely will not be people who are sitting here currently. But it always helps, I know the city manager as well, when council actually can lay out what the goals are, and then she can modify a budget accordingly as well before it's brought to this body, because
Right.
a lot of those items belong at the council level rather than at a budget committee level.
That's true, and I will respond that we have talked about, yes, the need for the council goal session, which we did have to cancel, unfortunately, but city manager has talked with me and also with Councillor Bennett about council goals, and just checked in to see where we are and what we're hearing from our councilors about goals, and it did seem that it was prudent to go ahead and get the budget process going without the goal-setting session. We didn't seem to be venturing off from any of those goals. That was what I was gathering, and I think Councillor Bennett as well, and so directed the city manager to stay on course where those goals were concerned.
And you did adopt goals for a 2-year time period last time.
Right.
Yeah.
Member Bednar.
I just want to speak to Member Gonzalez's statement. It was at last city council meeting that we had that conversation. Salem Travel came to us and gave their annual report, and it was at that point, I'd like to see the funding for them go up. It is a traded sector business. It brings money from outside this community into this community. How much money more? I don't know. And I want specifics and measurements for the money that is being spent, for sure. But it's one of those things I see the direct benefit as a traded sector, just as exporting food products from our area or exporting a lot of other things from our area. Same thing, brings money in from the outside area.
Yep, and you need that.
So just know we're looking at it from the council's point of view as well.
Oh, thanks so
We
much.
have been talking about it.
That's good, yeah. It's a good question.
Member Dickey.
I'm going to pass, thanks.
Anybody else? All right, then we'll move to item number 9, public testimony for future budget issues. And I believe there's one person signed up. Mr. Bassett, welcome back.
Members, Scott Bassett from Ward 4. I just wanted to raise a couple of points real quick. Thank you for the time to do this. One is to say that I have a revenue source for your wish list funding. $100,000 is what is planned to go into the restoration of the historic cherry orchard in Minto Brown. And that, I believe, is general fund money that could be used for anything. And so I would like to say that the master plan update for Minto Brown Island Park has not been done, yet there's money set aside specifically that the old cherry orchard would be restored. That is the highest ground in the park. It's the most valuable for future recreational uses, and to lock it up into a restoration project should receive close review. Another item is just a question. The red light enforcement cameras. How long was that contract? Does the city own the equipment? Is the equipment leased? Is it still in use? What are the plans for it? And if there are no plans to use that equipment, could it be sold? Another topic is relating to revenues. The urban renewal areas take about $13 million off of the tax rolls and about $3.2 million out of the city general fund. And so when you're starting to talk about the need for Salem Travel to have more money, I would just ask that you somehow have a way to compare the revenue that you're losing out of the tax increment financing, that it is not available for essential city services, and any dollar that you send to SEDCOR or to Travel Salem is potentially a dollar that you could use for essential city services. But just if there was a way to look across the revenues and expenditures and compare those. And then the last point, and I appreciate your patience, is just the price to seismically reinforce the bridges, not just the Willamette bridges, but the bridges primarily around the hospital to withstand a major earthquake. ODOT does not have money budgeted to do seismic reinforcement of the bridges that they own, and it would be good to just put a price tag on it and know what is that unfunded liability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett.
Thanks. I've got a response.
Please.
Mr. Bassett, I just thought that since you raised a question with regard to the urban renewal funds, I'd like to just take a minute and kind of go over the benefit that we have from the urban renewal districts that maybe the public isn't as aware of, and this is a great opportunity to be able to talk about that, because yes, we do defer and we are not receiving those revenues, which we, yes, could spend across the general fund, but we know through tracking and analysis, very carefully done, that the income that is generated by the businesses that are on those properties is a tremendous part of the economic engine for this community, both from the wages that are able to be paid to the employees who work in those urban renewal areas, as well as the reinvestment that those companies are able to make into their properties, which eventually will be on the regular tax rolls and will be a benefit across the city. So I think that we have to sometimes look at different ways that monies are spent so that down the road there can be a greater return on that investment. And I believe strongly, and records show, that what the public sector can do in terms of investing public monies into projects that stimulate private sector investment often pay off far greater than if we were simply holding that money and then using that money across the general fund to fund basic city services. So, but I appreciate your question, because it kind of gives us a chance to think again about those monies and how we spend them. Thanks.
Member Bennett.
Thank you. Just to work off the mayor's comment, which is absolutely correct relative to the use of those funds. I mean, it has made all the difference in downtown Salem, I think, and other parts of Salem that we've had those urban renewal areas. But just so there isn't any confusion from those comments that were made, we can't close those urban renewal areas. They have established a debt. I think one could be closed at McGilchrist.
Yes, that's right.
And we could leave McGilchrist in the condition it's in, which would be a real disservice to the redevelopment of that really substantial industrial area that comes off that street, and to the poor people that are trying to use that cobbled together sidewalk when we hope someday to have a good one. But these are not things, and I think for any budget committee to be confronted with, is you don't get to open and close urban renewal areas. They don't work that way. We're 40 years into downtown, and we're probably 40 years away from closing it. But in all of the others too, because of the nature of tax increment financing, the suggestion that we have somehow available to us $3.2 million is just not true. And you have to be cautious with these numbers, unlike the speaker. And I think it's important we remember that we not get taken down some rabbit hole that we can't get out of, and that would be going down the question of closing urban renewal areas, which legally can't be done, and I think it misleads the public to suggest there's funds available there.
Yes, Member Clausen and
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, let's not get happy about closing urban renewal areas, especially McGilchrist. As Member Bennett said, it's a critical one for us for a long term. I recently purchased a business down in that area, and McGilchrist is in dire need of redevelopment. And without, if I understand it correctly, if we do not have that urban renewal area, nobody can develop on McGilchrist without improving the entirety of the street from 25th to 12th.
That's correct.
The urban renewal area allows somebody to come in and do a portion of development, do the street frontage improvement at that point without having to incur the cost from one end to the other, which is unbearable for anybody. So it serves a critical role, whether it's in actively redeveloping McGilchrist yet or not. So yeah, I agree. It's not something to be thrown around flippantly, but you know what? When we can, and we did. First ones in the state to do it. So I'm glad we're doing it. I'm glad we're keeping it, and I'm glad that the public is aware that it's a service we offer, which is the URA, and it's a good thing. So.
Member Nanki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to address two of the other items brought up, no, we don't own the red light cameras. It's a for-profit third party that pays us a certain percentage of the take. And we also don't hold all the cards in any of the decision-making. It's up to ODOT as well, because that's a state highway, and they approve whether or not they're there or not. And then secondarily, with the cherry orchard, if I recall, that was part of the projects that we, although I voted against, agreed to with NRCS as part of the transaction
restoration.
with the minnow. So
Yes.
we really can't do anything with that either.
Member Berger.
I've never heard of the cherry orchard until today. Could staff give me a little background on that issue?
Sure, I'll give you a little information off the top of my head, and then we can provide more information to you in writing. But we worked with the National Conservation Resource Service. I feel even trying to think of the acronym. A few years ago to restore some of the Minto Brown Park area to reduce flooding going into the future, to restore it to its natural state. And quite a bit of funds were used, federal funds, to take it out of farming, take some portions of it out of farming, and do some restoration and plant native trees and native grasses. We did an extensive public process about how people in the community would like to see those areas of the park restored moving forward. We received some ongoing maintenance funds, and part of that was allocated to a restoration of what was the old cherry orchard, which had been it hadn't really been pruned or cared for in, I think, decades probably. So there's I think, a public expectation that some work would be done there. As you've seen in the budget, we have a plan to go forward this year. Whether Mr. Bassett's point, if the money could be used otherwise, is accurate or not, I'll need to look into. I just don't recall that. And it maybe would need to be used for other restoration projects. That's what I need to see.
I would be curious to find that out, whether that budget is general fund, open budget, or not.
Right.
And also, since I'm a geography major, I'd be curious where that is. I would love to be able to ride my bike and do budget committee business on my bike for once.
Okay. We can send you a map of the park and we'll point it out. Okay.
You can take your clippers and do some further. Yeah. Mountain bike. Let's say
Mr. Bassett, did we answer all your questions? I see you got up a couple times. You sit down again. Are we done?
Just one follow-up point that on the urban renewal areas, there is significant bonding capacity available in about 2 years, and if there could be a discussion of how that's intended to be used. So just to add that to my other list of questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to other business. Is there other business? Right. If there is no other business, then let me remind you that the Budget Committee meets again next Wednesday, April 16th at 6 p.m. right here, and we are adjourned.
Yes.